Hey, everybody, we're here and we are live. I'm here with Kevin Foss.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, so you can hear the wonderful voice that he has. He does a wonderful podcast, and we're here answering your questions. We're going to do a question and answer. You're welcome to ask those in the box that you see here, and we're going to just be pulling them up here on the screen and answering them the best that we can. And I guess before we kind of do introductions and stuff, just kind of a disclaimer is that even though we're therapists, we're not really your therapist, and any information that we give is kind of just for information. Really, is for people to understand OCD and anxiety a little bit better. And so, well, what can we know about you, Kevin?
Oh, it's a broad question. This feels like one of those interview questions.
Yeah.
For like a job. What to know about me? Well, as you mentioned, I am I'm a licensed therapist out here in California, and I specialize in treating OCD and anxiety spectrum disorders. I have a private practice, Cal OCD, and the California OCD and Anxiety Treatment Center. It's a mouthful, I know, but that, and I'm also the host of the Fearcast podcast, and it's the podcast dedicated to OCD, anxiety, and anxiety spectrum disorders.
Yeah.
It's very, very similar format, question and answer based. And I'm just very appreciative to be on with you today.
Yeah. So I wanted Kevin on here because he, just hearing his podcast and the information that he has, like, it's amazing work, and definitely knows what he's talking about. A lot of therapists out in California, I found, that work with OCD and anxiety.
They like the weather. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, for sure. No, yeah. Well, good. Well, we're gonna just jump right in, and I'm gonna be posting your questions up here on the screen. And so if you don't want them up on the screen, maybe you delete it and put it in the comments later. So I'll just start right here at the top.
All right.
I had a dream, excuse me, had a dream about cheating. I said, what if I slept with somebody else that weekend and I just don't remember? You're in denial. You don't have OCD. You need to confess. I promise I didn't cheat. I'm crying so much. Man, this is so hard. This, I mean, in my mind, the first thought is kind of the false memory OCD is what some people call it. We know OCD makes people doubt anything. Even real memories can add more details into it that weren't really there. I know that you didn't really ask a question, but my thoughts were, therapy can really help. This is one of those things that we try not to figure out on purpose, to leave a lot of it uncertain and say, I don't know, maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I know people have heard me say that quite often, and maybe not. A lot of emotions come along with that, but we end up choosing to say, I'm not going to figure out this memory anymore and actually focus on life right now in this moment. That's the most important part, is what am I doing with my life? What am I going to do about the future? Not in the past. I don't think about that stuff. And if I do, I'm not giving it really good answers.
Perfectly said. Yeah. And real event OCD was certainly coming up for me as well in this. This one comment, you're in denial, you don't have OCD, confess. It's such a classic OCD intrusive thought, or it's doubting that you even have this doubting disease. So whenever that question or whenever that comment or that thought comes up, it's a really good red flag to use as, this is probably my OCD, and I'm just going to trust it as that. I'm willing to bet for this person, historically speaking, whenever they've had this thought, when they look at it retrospectively, they can probably say, yeah, man, that was an OCD thought, and I probably should have trusted that it was. So then as we move forward, we can take the risk and trust that maybe this is one of those OCD thoughts like the other ones. And then just as Nathan said, we're just going to intentionally not solve this one and leave this one alone and focus on today, focus on later today, focus on what I'm preparing to do for this week, that's going to be a lot more, a far better use of our time than sitting there wondering about this thing that happened that we can't change.
Yeah, I love that. I often use that mindset of, which, sometimes it can be tricky, but we say, if I'm even questioning if it's OCD, I might just risk that it's OCD related and choose to not figure this one out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's obviously much easier said than done, but having the right tools for sure can help.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Hi, I can feel feelings in body. Can feelings in body be mistaken for emotions or feeling in mind? Or in other words, wrong interpretation of body changes as emotional responses? Kind of wrap my
Yes.
head around that question. But yeah, go ahead.
Yes. I can elaborate, I suppose. So yeah, to that question, can the feelings in the body be mistaken for emotions or feelings in mind? Yes. It's those, and it's not to say that they are always wrong, it's that they are often mistaken. And that's part of that risk that's part of the risk we're trying to take. But if we take every feeling that we have and every emotional experience we have and we equate that to reality, then we're going to be thrown off a lot. And we're going to be misled a lot of times. So you also said, in other words, wrong interpretations of body changes as emotional responses. So I mean, I'm kind of reading that. I don't know how you're reading that. It's, can kind of be, my heart's racing all of a sudden. Well, it must mean that I am about to have a heart attack. I must be nervous about something bad's about to happen. My stomach is I get that weird butterfly feeling just randomly. I must be in love with that person over there. I wonder if that's where this person's going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we could just say yes and then move forward, but yeah, definitely we know feelings, emotions, thoughts. We could say false emotions that we can have,
Mm-hmm.
false feelings that our body produces because it says, "Hey, let me really make you super doubt this thing."
Mm-hmm.
And some people want to know, well, how do I know what's real and what's not? And we often, especially if it's mingled with anxiety, where you say we're not going to figure out if this means something or if it doesn't. This flutter that I have in my heart, or I'm choosing to not figure it out because I'm feeling lots of anxiety and I know it's something that just keeps happening over and over again. Choosing to treat it as possibly a false signal and just keep moving forward.
Yeah. That choice element is so important. I'm not going to wait for an answer. I'm not going to wait for evidence or proof that I should or ought to move on. It's that I'm going to move on, regardless of what the evidence or feeling suggests. It's things like this that lead me to my perhaps controversial opinion is that I say I'm the only therapist that's going to tell you that feelings are stupid, and that we feel them way too much, or that we give them all way too much credit. And it's not to say they are things that we need to ignore all of the time, but it's situations like this that I think Redbeard is talking about. Can feelings and body be mistaken for emotions or feelings? Yes. And if we treat all experiences as facts, then we're going to be misled a lot of times.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Very frustrating though, still.
Oh yeah. So Rohan says hi from India. That's good to be here. I wonder what time it is for you.
That's a great question.
Now I'm like, in the middle of the night? What are you doing up?
Might be 12:30. 12:30 or 10:30? It does not matter. I'm not going to solve this.
Yeah. Stay uncertain.
Exactly.
Intrusive thoughts. What to do if you don't have the money to go to a therapist? So I think, if not having a therapist is actually really common. The therapists aren't everywhere, at least specialists for OCD. I always say learn as much as you can about treatment, not necessarily about your fear specifically, but about treatment.
Mm-hmm.
As a lot of people think, I'm going to figure out how to treat, harm OCD or relationship OCD. So they're going to search everything they can about that one topic. And that's going down the wrong route. It's actually OCD is OCD. If this is what you're talking about. And we want to say, let's work on treatment. What are all the exposure and response prevention things that people say, whether it's videos that we have or podcasts, or it's finding options for you as far as treatment goes, and then people try it. They try whatever they feel like is best for them, and definitely connecting yourself with others if you can through a group to help you understand what treatment is all about. I know I have my online course that some people choose to take. It's not necessarily for treatment, but it's more just this is how you actually do it if you ever want to.
Yeah, kind of the informational components to it. These are the building blocks of what this thing is all about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. To this point, I get this question from time to time over at the Fearcast, and my response to that is usually that there's so many resources out there right now. There are, and I anticipate there's just going to increasingly become more and more resources out there. I agree very much with what Nathan was saying, in that we can go down the rabbit hole of just looking up the subtype of I have ROCD, so let's learn everything about ROCD and kind of pigeonhole ourselves into the discussions on ROCD boards or Reddit or Facebook or some of these other things, and it can slowly become this identity in a sense. But if we can pull back from that and start to see ROCD or HOCD or sexual orientation OCD or whatever subtype as just what Nathan was saying, it's OCD. That's all it is. Ultimately, it's kind of the same thing in these different subtle variations and eccentricities. But finding books can be a great thing to do. So there are certainly your videos. There are going to be podcasts out there. There's a plethora of really good books and workbooks out there. And I know those cost money, but there are also a lot of them can be found through the library. I'm willing to bet if you go to your online library or whatever library you have, usually has an online aspect to it. If they don't have the book, request they buy the book. Oftentimes they will. So I would encourage you to go look out for other resources out there, and books are going to be a great option. But running that through the lens of also podcasts and kind of looking for some similarities in messages, not necessarily going with this therapist has this very inflammatory and very sparkly approach. But if it's left field from what everybody else is saying, it might be a less reliable way to go.
Yes. Because there's definitely the people who are like, everyone's telling you to do this, but you actually do this, and it's something major that you've never heard of before, just to kind of draw you into like, ooh, they have the cure, essentially. They've got the answers.
It's going to cure it. Here's the fix. Yeah. If someone is selling you something that's going to cure OCD, I would encourage you to move on to another resource.
Yeah, simple way to say it. Every time I gain a level of certainty, I get a new thought, like, what if it's this instead? Or remember this new detail that could potentially ruin your life. I don't even know what's real anymore. So, I think that's why we tend to go with the route of certainty is not the way we go. We try not to gain certainty. I know it happens sometimes naturally, but purposefully not try to figure out a thought, because this is exactly what it does. It's like, but have you thought about it this way? Maybe you didn't give all the details about this. Maybe this thing happened. It'll throw in new ideas, just like you're experiencing. And if you gain certainty with that new idea, it often will come up with new details that maybe didn't even exist in the first place. And so it's super, super common. I'm glad that you're able to talk about this. But for me, just kind of that uncertainty piece is where we want to live. Is I'm choosing to not figure out if this memory is true or if it's not, or if I really did this, or if I really could do this. It's going to be a maybe, maybe not for me for this specific thought every single time it ever comes up in my brain. And usually we find that those thoughts tend to reduce over time because it just knows, like, I'm not giving this any power. And so why does it want to keep coming back to my brain?
Right. It knows it's not going to get a rise out of you anymore. So every time we get it, we just go, and move on to the next tangible thing in front of us. And yeah, your brain starts to go, okay, this is not going to be the thing that gets a rise out of him anymore. I guess we've got to move on. It may find something new, but we treat it the same way, choosing to not know that one either. And not knowing is also okay.
Yep. I often find that individuals will say, but this is important. This one is definitely important. I have to figure this out because it affects my family or affects my future, or if I need to turn myself in, or, there's always a reason for it. And we often kind of take a step back and say, I've said this in a video and I felt a little hesitant saying it, but I'm like, you're not special. You're not more special than the other person having this, different thought. But OCD wants to make you feel like this one is different and special, but we have to treat them all the same.
I've heard that said. I have said that myself, and it always feels invalidating or mean to say, but it's also one of those realities. OCD and our anxiety wants us to make us feel that this moment, this time, this interaction is the most important. And it doesn't matter about all those other ones, this one. So spend all the time, figure it out, protect yourself, protect your future, your family, your life, your community, whatever it is. It's that, with all due respect to your anxiety, it's also not. And part of treatment is learning to trust that it isn't the most important thing. Not that you're not important, not that what you care about or your love life or your whatever life isn't important. It's that solving this right now is not the most important thing. And our brain learns that.
Oh, for sure. Oh, well said. Our friend from India, I'm suffering from OCD since childhood, and I get to know this a few months back that it's a disorder. I'm so glad that you were able to figure this out. Hopefully you're learning treatment skills and can do what you need to while you're there. I'm curious what providers are in India, actually. I don't even know. There's got to be someone. Hey, good evening. I started to feel anxiety symptoms again after 1 month of symptoms free. What should I do? So I always say OCD is treatment is a lifestyle. That's something we do whether symptoms are there or whether they're not. And we learn over time that when I don't have symptoms, I actually need to continue reminding my brain that I'm still the boss. I still get to do whatever I want to do. And this thing that used to bother me isn't going to bother me anymore because I'm willing to engage with it every day, even if it doesn't bother me, just for my brain to know this doesn't bother me. Each person's different on why maybe they don't have symptoms, because we know OCD goes up and goes down. But I often say continue treatment if that's something you're doing. And whatever you did before is probably a thing you want to do again if it was treatment.
That's exactly what I was thinking in a much snarkier way than what you were going to say. It's you were living anxiety, or your anxiety's returned after a month of being symptom free. What should I do? Probably a lot of the stuff that you were doing before. And kind of to the previous point, or the previous questioner, ultimately nothing special needs to be done, to a certain degree, obviously. If for that month you weren't doing anything and then all of a sudden you started doing a whole bunch of compulsions, stop doing those compulsions. But with the point about what should I do, continue doing the healthy lifestyle things that you probably were doing for that month. I'm willing to bet for that month you weren't ruminating. I'm willing to bet for that month you weren't washing your hands excessively, or you weren't re-driving your car, or re-driving the route over and over again. And whatever that thing was for you, keep not doing those things, and the anxiety will be there. But just like it's come back, it had gone away, and now that it's back, it will go away again. And we ride through these cycles of things, and that's part of to Nate's point. We kind of learn a lifestyle that's anti-anxiety in a sense. We learn a lifestyle of health and consistency and productivity and focus and refocus. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Oh, well said. The more I disregard OCD thoughts, the more tricks OCD brings. As a result, it's usually in lingering anxiety and fear. I'd be curious what disregard OCD thoughts means for you. Because each person, if I'm disregarding, like, I don't want that thought, I don't want it, it's definitely going to bring more anxiety, more fear, more thoughts. Disregarding it might be, I'm answering it the same every time. Like, hey, well, is the stove on? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Or I'm disregarding it by saying, I'm choosing to not go figure this out right now. So I'm essentially engaging with the thought, but I'm giving it a different response than I normally would. I know through exposures, we're going to feel some anxiety and fear because it's not something people are normally used to doing. And with the lingering, sometimes we learn to accept, yep, I'm going to be feeling anxiety. I'm going to be feeling fear. But that doesn't indicate anything because I'm willing to just accept it as a feeling. And so I don't know, what are your thoughts on disregarding a thought?
I think you brought up some really good points with what disregard means. If disregard means thought suppression, then yes, you're ensuring that it's going to be there. But if we use the term disregard to say we don't care about it, meaning that we don't attend to it or give it special meaning, then that's going to be a great thing. Then because we can think about a lot of things that we disregard because we also don't pay attention to them, but we acknowledge that they're there. We don't pretend they're not. We don't fight against them to make sure that they are not there. There's a tree outside my window. I don't care. The only reason I bring it up is because I don't think about it. I had to pick something that I don't care about. So that tree. But I'm also not going to spend the rest of my day thinking about it. I see it's there, but I'm not going to go outside and chop it down. I'm not going to write the city managers and say, please get rid of this tree. I'm just going to move on with my day and refocus back on the other stuff that I have that's as more important in my life. And I'm going to let that tree be there. It may fall down tomorrow. If it does, it's probably not going to change my life. This thought may disappear from your life. It may not. But when we are engaging in thought suppression or compulsive rumination, we ensure that it's going to be there. It's like me going outside and caring and watering for that tree and putting a big wall around it so no one chopped it down. So we ultimately we act as if it's not there, and we live our life.
Yeah, I like that. It's going to remind me of just mindfulness. You're just accepting the presence of whatever it is and not necessarily having to do anything with it. That's great. I'm going to pull this one up. I don't get donations very often, so it's hard to know how to handle these kind of things, but I appreciate this. What is your best advice for someone suffering from compulsive staring OCD? I put myself in uncomfortable situations and interact with people on a daily basis, but it's been very mentally draining. And I've thought a lot about compulsive staring recently, just different treatment ideas and thoughts that people have. And I've kind of found there's two different ones that people tend to worry about is, I'm worried that I'm going to stare. I'm thinking about the possibility of me actually staring. Or the other one is I might actually be staring. And it could be staring at, private areas. You could be staring at literally anything. I'd stare at people's toes. I mean, it could be whatever the brain kind of attaches to. We use exposures for these types of obsessions, and some exposures for different people are often since you're already in these uncomfortable situations, it'd be, what are the compulsions that I typically do? And those are the things I'm going to choose not to do while I'm in these situations. And that tends to be an exposure. Is if I talk to people and I'm always like this when I'm talking to them, I'm going to make sure that I'm looking straight at them. And if my eyes linger, then they do. I think there's a lot of acceptance that comes along with this, that we accept that we're not saying staring at this is good or staring at this is bad. We're actually just like, we're living life, and whatever happens, happens. I don't know, how much experience do you see this in your practice, Kevin?
I don't see it very often. I have seen it in the past. I saw a talk on this at the OCD conference this year, and it was being reframed as, or being called visual Tourettic OCD, so VTO, and a lot of what they were saying was, in terms of exposures, because sometimes there's almost this lack of awareness of when you're staring. It's not like I'm going to stare, at least in the way that they were framing it. I'm not going to, there wasn't a focus of, I'm intentionally staring at this thing and am doing this. It's kind of this absent-minded, my eyes and my brain just happen to find my way to X. And then I suddenly become aware of it. And now there's this anxiety because I'm doing this thing. So, we can't control that which we're not controlling, or we can't control that which we don't have any focus on to a certain degree. So if we happen to find ourselves staring, we say, okay, I'm staring. And then what else am I going to do? But from what I remember, it's been 3 months, but 3 months of life is kind of knocks everything out of my stupid head. But they were kind of talking about part of the exposure focus was looking at the fear of getting caught and what was going on around that. So, a lot of scripting, and then a lot of scripting and pulling back on rumination, because I'm willing to bet that someone who's doing this is then thinking about, what was I staring at? Who did I offend them? Did they know? Am I going to offend somebody? All of this stuff. So taking the risk of not answering the question and maybe getting in trouble, but also maybe not getting in trouble. But we're not going to sit here in this moment and figure it all out, because we can't predict the future. So let's not try to do that. So that is my contribution to this question.
Yeah, I know that if the mindset is, how can I stop staring? We're going down the wrong route.
Right.
You're going to notice it more. You're going to feel it more. You're going to think about it more. It's more of, how can I learn to accept that I might be staring, I might not. And if I do, then I do. And if I don't, then I don't. But either way, I'm moving on with life. And if I get caught, I get caught. And if I don't, then I don't. But that's the whole idea of any treatment for any OCD, is I'm willing to accept any answer, even if it seems really horrible that I would get caught. It's like, we learn to fix problems when there's actually problems.
Right.
And not try to avoid there being a problem. So I've had some people go to grocery stores and just look at everyone they see on purpose. And if their brain says, "Oh, you're staring, you stared," they're like, "Yeah, I'm so glad that I stared. That's amazing. I love that feeling that I get. You know, it's amazing." To totally change the whole reaction their body and brain has to it, to be more of a, yeah, cool type of mentality, more than like, "Oh, I got to avoid it."
Right. And there can also be a mindset shift from this, oh no, if I get caught doing this, it's going to be the worst and my life is going to be destroyed or my character is going to be sullied or whatever it might be, to I'll deal with that when I get there. And we build this confidence that when problems arise, we can actually deal with them as opposed to living in fear that they're going to destroy us. Likely speaking, they're probably not. But that being said, well, and I say the only reason I say that is because we haven't had any other problems that's destroyed us thus far. Why would this one be any different? We can trust. We'll trust that, you know, when that happens, I'll deal with it. If and when that happens, I'll deal with it. But I'll, you know, it's the classic saying, "I'll cross that bridge when I get there." I ain't there yet. If I get caught, I'll deal with it. But you know what? For right now, I'm not. So I'm not going to deal with it. And we move on.
I like that. And do what I want to do. I want to go to the grocery store, so I'm going to go to the grocery store. I want to go hang out with this group of people. I'm going to hang out with this group of people. That's what life's all about.
You're the boss of you.
Yep. So I was curious if you really are the world's oldest millennial, but that's a whole separate thing. That's your name. I've had some positive life changes happen, and it's hard for me to focus on the present because of my anxiety has moved towards anxiety over losing this. Any tips for staying in the present? Well, we tend to use mindfulness, but I'm curious if the fear or obsession is I'm going to lose myself not being in the present, maybe we don't focus on trying to be in the present, if that makes sense. So, because some people are so worried that I'm not really here. I'm not really paying attention to what's going on in front of me, and I need to be present. And they're obsessing about that so much that we might focus that essentially being an exposure of like, cool, let's not be present on purpose. If I'm so worried about not being present, I'm going to make sure I distract myself, or I don't know, listen to a lecture, but I'm going to have a earbud in, or I don't know, something that is going to make me so I'm not present. That's kind of the way I'm taking it. But if we do want to be present, that's where we use mindfulness. And
this is unfortunate, the limitations of getting questions and answers like this, that if they were in our office on our couch, we'd be asking a whole bunch of follow-up questions, but unfortunately we're going to have to go with what we have to go on. I think it's an interesting reading to almost view it as, it almost reminds me of somatic OCD in the sense of this hyper focus on this sensation or this feeling, and ultimately needing to, but then again, it's kind of the reverse of it. The reason I was drawing that line is that there's almost this, no, I cannot be distracted. I want to be focused, and a lack of acceptance of the fact that this person is distracted. We get distracted. You are distracted. You have positive changes in your life. I'm willing to bet you're thinking about those positive changes, because that's what the brain would probably do. That's what we do. And by the way, whenever we have any changes, we're going to think about them. We're going to reference them. We're going to acknowledge them. If we get stuck in them, that's where it can become a problem. But we're going to have our brain focus on the future, what's going to happen, the wonderful things that are going to happen to you. Congratulations that you've had these positive changes. Yes, your brain is going to think about those. If you had awful changes in your life too, you will also attend to those sometimes. And then you will think about, gosh, I'm really uncomfortable in this chair. And then you're not focusing on that thing. Darn it, you need to focus back on that thing. And then you'll start thinking about that. And then all of a sudden you'll go, why is the air conditioning on? And our brain will kind of shift back and forth. And that's what will happen in life. So we need to accept this kind of fluctuating in and out of it. When we then say, my brain has to do blank, good luck. Good luck with that, because it won't. It usually does the complete opposite, because the brain is mean. It's mean like that. And it's not just those with OCD and anxiety. It's everybody's brain fluctuates in and out of this thing. So ride that wave of the distraction intentionally, and to Nate's point, intentionally be distracted. I love that. Go listen to a lecture, have one earbud in, watch a movie you've never seen before, go pay for a movie, go to a movie theater that you're really excited to go see, and have an earbud in. Get distracted. Go with that friend that you know is really distracting, who's going to be on their phone that you hate so much. They're going to be distracting. And practice that patience. Practice your fluctuation in and out. And we learn that we can do that, and the world is not going to crumble. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much take whatever we think it means for us. If I'm distracted, or if I'm not present, it means this. That's essentially what we're risking. It means that the positive changes are going to not be positive anymore. Then maybe I risk that on purpose if I'm so worried about that happening, because I have these positive changes. It's hard because we can't do those follow-up questions to figure it out. But we essentially move towards just living life.
Right. Stephen Phillipson talks a little bit about this on an OCD Stories podcast, about being not knowing that about essentially just allowing ourselves to be distracted, and not being he uses the word entitled, and I know it's kind of a hot button word, but not to have this feeling that we are entitled to never being distracted and only think about one thing. So we learn to have that fluidity of attention, and whether or not it's staying for a long time on a sensation or a thought or the present moment, or it's not on those things, that for right now is going to be okay. Again, we decide, I'm going to treat it as if it's okay, even though we don't feel like it in the moment. We intentionally decide we're going to treat it as if it is not this big problem, and we eventually start to show our brain that it's not a problem over time.
Can a mistake be too bad to be called a real event OCD? I feel like the exception because of my mistake. I think that's the definition of real event, is anything, anything that has happened that is real.
Yep.
Doesn't matter how bad, how good. I often tell individuals, we're not putting a barometer on, oh man, this one is the top of the worst, and this one is not, and this one's bad, and this one's not. That's what the brain is already doing, and saying this one's too bad. I know definitely there's natural feelings from doing something that we regret. That's just natural. That's what our body does, is like bring shame and guilt and sometimes anxiety because of it. But we often get to a point where the brain moves on. And when the brain doesn't move on, meaning that you'll still have thoughts, but when the brain doesn't move on and it's obsessive about this one thing or this one event, that's where I often look at maybe some real event OCD, because we can't change it, whatever it is, and we learn to accept life for life and move forward. Easy just to say, yeah, just move forward, but it's more of can I do treatment for these past experiences, not necessarily to figure them out, but to respond differently to them when they come to my brain, the stories or scenarios or whatever it is. Maybe that's more than what you asked, but definitely can be real event OCD. Doesn't matter what it is.
Right. And This sounds like it's OCD's way of just trying to rope you back in. This person, may have had previous real events or may have had previous obsessions, but then this is just another obsession. What if this mistake is too bad to be called real event OCD? So this is the one. What if this is the one that all the therapists are going to go, no, you really messed up there, and I'll bet this person is then ruminating about, gosh, I wonder what Nathan's going to say. I wonder if I told Kevin really what it was. I bet he'd go, yeah, you should definitely go to the police on this one. And we're going to sit with not knowing that answer, and that and we take that risk because I don't know what that thing is, and I ultimately don't need to know. We do need to sit with the uncertainty over the repercussions or of the potential meanings of what this mistake was. I don't know what it was. It might have been bad. It might have been nothing. It might have been just something that your brain is latching onto. But you're talking to two OCD therapists about an OCD thing. We're going to treat it probably like it's OCD. And you also named it real event OCD. Let's take the risk that maybe this is one of those and choose to not answer this one, even though it feels bad, even though it feels more real than all the other ones. Yes, it does feel bad. And what else are we going to do with that, with our day?
Oh, I love that. What else are we going to do? Perfect.
That's a great question.
I don't get asked this question very often, but I like it. I like them all. But when it's quiet, I feel my ear is ringing more. I get scared it's getting louder. I know it's not my ear, it's in my brain, but I'm scared to be in a quiet place. Is there any therapy for this? So I have a video on my list. I need to create it for this, but I have ringing in my ears, and it's super fun.
It's super fun.
And I went to go get it all checked out. Like, do I have hearing loss? Is there a problem? I was thinking about it often because I would hear it and I would start noticing it more. And oh man, I'm hearing it when I have earplugs in, and like just all the time. And what the doctor told me was, he's like, there's literally nothing we can do for your ringing other than for you to respond differently to it. And I'm like, do you know what I do for a living? But I loved that answer because every time I hear ringing in my ears now, I look at it and I'm like, I love this. I love how this sounds. It's just a big, bunch of violins in the background, just playing some music throughout my day. That's so wonderful. And I hope I keep hearing it. I hope it ruins, when I'm in this quiet place, I sure hope it ruins it. I hope I keep focusing on this. This is amazing. And I found that response for me was the response that my brain needed to hear, because it didn't get rid of the ringing, but it made it so I actually don't notice it as often because I don't give it any value and no power whatsoever. And that for me is kind of the treatment, is how can I not think about it, but to respond differently to it. And that we want to be in quiet places then, if that's something I'm worried about being in. Or I want to put in some earplugs, you definitely will hear it then. And enjoy it. I always tell people, enjoy the sound. And if I'm like, yep, this is getting louder, cool, it's getting louder. That there's definitely a difference between kind of a general sense of like, oh man, my ears ringing, what is that? Versus like, my ears are ringing, I'm feeling lots of anxiety, I feel this urge and immense, like I need to figure it out right now. There's definitely a difference. And one of them just kind of curious what's going on, and maybe I go get it checked out by a doctor. The other one is like, like if there's lots of anxiety and fear, that's where we do treatment for it.
Exactly. That maybe you're going to hear it, and you might be hearing it. I've had tinnitus most of my life. And those old, like they'll show this in westerns or movies where they show it in they're out in the field somewhere, and it's kind of the sound of cicadas or of like bugs in the air, and it's just kind of general high-pitched sound they put in there. I thought they included that in movies because that's what everyone heard, right? No, that's just what I heard all the time. And that's just what it sounds like to me. So to a certain degree, my shift with that, and it sounds like your shift as well, is we relabel it. I don't not to necessarily go back to the four the brain lock approach, the 4 steps of the brain lock approach, but we kind of relabel this. This is I'm going to pull away the problem label, and I'm going to put on it as a not problem label. I'm going to put on this as it's a nothing. For me, I just live in a Western all the time, apparently. In my head, I just constantly live in a Western.
Yeah,
and that's more fun than labeling this and dealing with a quote problem all the time. When we label things as problem, our brain finds solutions, and that's where our compulsions come up. So how do you pull back on the problem label of this?
Yeah.
And I like this approach that you had. I'm going to love it. I'm going to lean into it. I'm going to find a way to make it happen. You kind of talked about as violins. I think you live in a symphony. I live in a Western. So where is this person going to live?
Hey, it's great. No. I had a few more people donate here. I appreciate it. Any tips on how to proceed with valued behavior when you're having intrusive thoughts and feelings which keep you in a state of avoidance? I get stuck on analyze the emotions I feel at times. So state of avoidance. I think that's what we typically want to do because we obviously don't want to face whatever it is that's placed in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes have people take a list of all the things that they're avoiding, and they might pick one that they're going to get really good at not avoiding. So I'm going to start going to grocery stores again, or I'm going to start driving by myself, or I'm going to use a computer by myself, like whatever it is in their life are the things that I'm going to do. I like that you said valued behavior, because we know OCD loves to attack our values. We often want to get back to that. What are the things I stopped doing that I actually do care about? And those are the things I want to start doing again. We analyze emotions and feelings and try to make sense of them. And we often say, we don't need to make sense of anything. We just need to focus on what are we doing right now? What's the rest of my day look like in the next 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 5 minutes? That's what I'm focusing on. And when I start analyzing thoughts and emotions, it's hard. We can't just say push those out because that's avoidance. We actually might say, let's let the thoughts be there, but we're not doing anything with them. Or we're answering them like, man, maybe not. I don't know. Something bad might happen, whatever the fears are. We're allowing life to just be life.
Yeah. It's there are some of those big points in there, right? State of avoidance. When you're stuck in your state of avoidance, the valued behaviors are things that we do regardless of how it makes us feel, because they're valued, they're important to us. I'm also reading in that, when you're stuck analyzing the emotions, what is the purpose of the analysis? What are you trying to figure out? What are you looking for? What are you hoping to get? All of that is just holding you in that. And I'm a lot of times when we're in that rumination about, or in the analysis of our feelings, that we're trying to look for, are they getting better? Are they getting worse? If they're getting worse, what do I do to fix that? If they're getting better, oh goody, right? It's that sometimes we feel bad and sometimes we feel anxious, and all of that is okay. It's just one of the other feelings that we have. You don't get mad that you're happy. You don't get mad that you're feeling neutral. It's that, well, some people do actually, but it's that you feel anxious right now. Okay. Oftentimes as well, whenever we do valued behaviors, it comes at a cost of comfort, a cost of time, a cost of relationship, a cost of potentially risking a relationship. We might feel anxious when we're doing a valued behavior, but we do them because they're valued. So I would recommend to this person that by the way, I love this idea of creating this list of all your avoidances and then becoming really good at not doing that avoidance and whatever that thing is. And it doesn't mean that we then, become a perfectionist and we have to be an expert at whatever that activity is. We can still suck at it, but we become an expert at not avoiding it. So we do it and bring along that anxiety. We do it and bring along that discomfort. And if it gets higher or lower, who cares? We're doing this valued behavior because we know it's important. So, and we did then, to that previous point, we disregard that analysis process.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Oh. Good question. Do you have time for one more, Kevin?
Yeah.
All right.
Do you have time for one more?
Oh, I sure do.
Okay.
Let me answer this from Brian here. So I had HOCD, or sexual orientation OCD. It went misdiagnosed when I was younger at 15. I went on suffering for years and actually tried something to get rid of it. I carry even more shame and resentment towards myself. I feel horrible. It's on the second one.
Okay.
And I don't know what to do. It's super common. I have a lot of individuals who kind of want to test it out. And I want to know if I am attracted to this person or gender, or if I am transgender, or whatever it ends up being. And so people will do different behaviors and then they'll regret it. And there'll be some shame and resentment towards themselves. I think for me, I always just let life, I've said this a few times today, but let life be life. That I might do things and I did things, and I might, whatever it is, like that's what life's all about, is experiences and mistakes and worries and anxiety, but we get to figure out what we're going to do about it now. That we're focusing on life right now. What am I doing today? And is there, we're trying not to get rid of the thoughts or the feelings. We're actually saying, how can I learn to accept that whatever feeling or thought I have, I can deal with right now, and I don't need to make sense of them anymore. We don't need to test anything out. We don't need to avoid. We need to just live life. And any shame and resentment that comes is the brain's way of saying, you need to remember this. This is important. But it's like, but wait, does that match my value system and who I am, like right now? And if it doesn't, then I need to continue moving forward. Shame for me and guilt is something we learn from. So if I learn from an experience, I need to move forward. And if I can't move forward because my brain just won't let me, then I need to respond differently to it. And I've had some people I can think of that have done things that they regret, and they often will respond to it as like, awesome, I'm so glad I did that. Like completely opposite of what they've actually been thinking for the past few years. Like, I'm so glad I did that. What a wonderful experience. Maybe I'll do it again. And their brain like explodes because it's like, you're supposed to feel shame. What are you doing? But it's teaching the brain that I'm moving forward. Look how much I don't care about this thing anymore.
Right. Yeah. That idea of shame just sucks us down and it doesn't help us. It's that bad feeling we get when we are something bad. I'm wondering, is this person shaming themselves? What is that shame? What does it sound like in your head? What are you telling yourself about you because of this thing? The reality is you did this thing. It's not your favorite thing. You regret this thing, whatever that thing was. And it happened. And you're you today. You're not you when you were 15 or you whenever this thing happened. And I love Nate's point. It's we're going to live today. There's this idea of I talk about a lot of letting ourselves off the hook for things that we've done. We can't beat ourselves up for things that we've done, and it's never going to change that thing. When we forgive ourselves, we are no longer seeking punishment towards ourselves or somebody else for harms done. So we don't beat ourselves up. How are you punishing yourself for this thing? through thought, through action, through withholding of whatever. Take yourself off of that hook and go let yourself live life and have this be a part of who it is that you are and part of your road to get you to today. And then what else in your life? Is this the thing that you are going to make be the defining moment of your life? Or are there other things that are going to be more important to you? We can make that shift, but it requires first taking yourself off the hook of being punished. So that's where I would start, is by looking at the shame component.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that. So we answered a lot of questions today, and let me find that here. I know Kevin's got a podcast. Does this show up for you? Is this the right website?
I'm seeing it. Yep. Fearcastpodcast.com. Yep.
And I have that in the link down in the description as well. But like all things OCD, anxiety, the one came out today was about trigger warnings. Do we need trigger warnings? Be curious to know your guys' opinion on that. But go listen. It's amazing. You already hear his voice. It's awesome. You can see his face now. You know who he is. But this is a great guy. Is there anything else that you do or you'd like to say on here?
I think that probably the most relevant thing is probably this. I have a couple articles up at Psychology Today about just OCD and phobias, and a little bit of scrupulosity is kind of scrupulosity being one of my particular interests. And but check it out. There's over 3 years of podcasts over at fearcastpodcast.com. And, it's a question and answer based podcast just like this. So you can certainly send in questions to me and I will likely put it up on a future episode. And, Nate's been up on actually this episode, the one that's up. And if there are questions that you have a burning desire to have him answer, I'll reach out to him and see if he'd be willing to jump on again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Take a listen.
Oh, well, great. I appreciate you guys all being here, asking questions. Definitely do this again. And if there's questions I wasn't able to get to, you're welcome to ask them down in the comments after we're done here. And I try to go through and answer as many as I can. So, all right. Thank you so much for being here, Kevin. I appreciate you. And
of course. Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a lot of fun. You're I wish I was half as peaceful and mellow as you. That would be great. You have such a presence about you. So thank you again for having me on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kevin. Well, thank you guys.